Legend of to the War here, and today we're doing another tier list using Tier Maker, this time covering the Khorne updated unit roster, including the DLC units for Skulltaker's part of Omens of Destruction. So before we get into the tier list itself, I do need to let you guys know that this video here is sponsored by Manscaped. You guys know I've been with Manscaped for ages. I love the product, I love working with them. Kicking off the new year strong, Manscaped are offering the Beard and Balls bundle. It comes with the Lawnmower 5.0, which is your all-purpose electric razor. Its main purpose is to get the hairs on your balls without cutting you, but I use this for pretty much everything from shaving my face in a hurry or getting a haircut. It's also coming with the Beard Hedger trimmer. This electric razor allows you to shape and maintain a majestic beard. It's never been easier to deal with body hair than with Manscaped. Check out the link in the description or pinned comment and get 20% off plus free international shipping. Big thanks to Manscaped for sponsoring this and so many other of my videos. Okay, with that being said, let's get into the tier list itself. Now, Khorne is a little bit strange in how it functions. In my opinion, it is the strongest race in the game, but not everyone is going to agree with that opinion, and that really comes down to what kind of player you are. I think for an aggressive player like myself, I'm able to basically do more with Khorne in a smaller amount of time than any other faction, which is why I consider it to be the strongest. But there are players out there that don't play that way, and they're a little bit more passive. They prefer to bite and hold and be a bit more cautious, and that's totally fine as well, and maybe they'll struggle a little bit with Khorne. But in my opinion, Khorne is a faction that really thrives when you just put yourself into the deep end and just smash, and just focus on crushing your opponents as fast as you possibly can, because that's also going to really boost your economy. If you end up losing units, you can just replace them because you get so much money from your loot. You don't really make that much cash from the actual taxes from your settlement. And so Khorne playing very differently from most of the other factions in the game can be a bit of a culture shock for some players. And I just want to point that out at the very beginning as well. Another thing is that Khorne has a lot of redundancies in its roster. It doesn't have that much true variety because a lot of these units serve essentially the exact same role of a unit that is recruited from maybe the same building or at the same tier as that unit, and maybe it's just a little bit of stat changes. A lot of redundancies here, so we got to take that into consideration. So first thing here with the Marauders, there's a bit of a weird thing that's going on. Every now and again I'm going to jump into Total War Warhammer 3 and actually show this into the building browser. So in most factions in the game, at their main settlement structure, they have essentially their most basic unit. So that would be the Marauder tier unit. But Khorne is different. So you've got two different settlement structures that are mutually exclusive. You've got your demon structure, and if you build this, then all mortal type units, except for these units here, will be disabled. And you have your Bloodletter available from the main settlement. And then from the mortal building, which you can switch, you have your Chaos Warriors, which is essentially, it is a tier 2 unit, and it's essentially recruited at more convenience than Marauders. Now, even though this unit is more expensive, it really shouldn't matter that much if you're an aggressive player. 200 upkeep cost, it doesn't matter if you're just smashing things all the time. It just shouldn't matter at all. And so it's a bit of a weird situation where a tier 2 unit doesn't require an additional military building, but a tier 1 unit does. But at least when it comes to this faction here, their military building is also kind of their economic building as well, because you make a small amount of favor from the military buildings, which many factions in the game, many other races, don't do. So that's why I've said in the past, like, I usually don't build the military buildings in the early stage. I build the economy buildings. The thing is, the military building is the economy building for Khorne, and I usually do build them in the early stage of the game. So Marauders do have some value, but at the same time, you've got access to Chaos Warriors. Anywhere you can get a Marauder, you can get a Chaos Warrior, and a Chaos Warrior is like twice as good as them. So when it comes to this basic Marauder here, it is just straight up outclassed by a Chaos Warrior. There is the only advantage of recruiting this is cheap, but again, if you're good at Khorne, you just don't need to worry about that. Just get Chaos Warriors, and it's much better to recruit, say, 4 Chaos Warriors as opposed to 8 Marauders, because 4 Chaos Warriors will be able to deliver so much more value. Much higher morale, much higher armor. They're going to get twice, 3 times, 4 times the amount of kills. And as you continue to put more units in the army, you won't need to like disband existing Marauders in order to make room for them, because you'll keep these for a long time. So as for the The regular Marauder, I'm going to put that at D tier. My advice would be just skip it, go for Chaos Warriors, even if that means you're not rolling around with a full stack and you're a little bit worried that your income from looting, I guess, isn't really paying for your forces. Just don't have a full stack. Have a better, smaller stack. It'll serve you better in the long run, in my opinion, if you're going to go with a mortal-based army. Then as for the anti-infantry variant, this one here does serve a little bit more purpose. So I'm going to put it at C tier. Again, it's still going to be outclassed by the regular Chaos Warrior, but at least this one here has anti-infantry, which in the early game, the vast majority of the enemies that you go up against will be infantry, and so that'll give it a little bit of an edge. It'll have a higher melee attack, they'll be a little bit faster, they'll dish out damage better than these guys here, only slightly, at a better price point. But what it really comes down to is these ones here, you really can skip them and just focus on them. You'll be fine in pretty much all cases. Now, as for Bloodletters, this is a unit that, again, just recruited at tier 0. I quite like Bloodletters. It's not really for everyone, but I usually go for Bloodletters early on because they're much faster than mortal units, and I do like speed. Being able to outpace your opponent, like if they've got archers, that means that they'll get fewer volleys in on you before you close in on them. Also, they're much faster killers than these guys here, so you can turn your opponents into mincemeat way faster, again, so you can get at those archers. But they are also very vulnerable to damage, as opposed to these guys here. These guys here are way tankier. They can absorb so much more damage than these ones. Another problem with demons is that they are particularly unstable, and when they're down to like 30-40% health, sometimes they can just disintegrate. But luckily now demons can have a chance of reforging, and that chance is reasonably high, especially if you win. So I'm gonna put the Bloodletters at A tier here because it's a really good unit that hits hard, and it's anti-infantry as well, so it serves the exact same role as this one, but they're not built from the same structure. So if you're playing a mortal-based army, mortal-based settlement, then the Bloodletter won't be available for you unless you've got another settlement elsewhere that you can globally recruit them. Again, it depends on each individual situation. Khorne can be a bit weird with that. Every situation is different. Then as for the Exalted Bloodletter, so that one is recruited at tier 3. It has a base recruit time of 2 turns. Now, slow recruit time is extremely bad for Khorne. You don't want to be sitting around doing nothing for any amount of time. You want to move every single turn. In fact, you want to fight a battle every single turn. And so Exalted Bloodletters have a big disadvantage with that. So unless your army is you're just recruiting a fresh army, you're not replacing units, this one here can be disadvantages for you. There is a way eventually to be able to recruit them 1 turn globally. So I'll just go through some of the stuff here. So again, they're recruited from tier 3 here. Obviously, you can build a lot of structures to recruit the thing. It'll reduce the global recruit time. But if you have a look at bloodletting, if you keep your bloodletting going and get to the maximum, your globally recruit time will go down to by -2. If we have a look at this guy here, and look at Exalted Bloodletters, the base time for them is 4 turns, which is of course double their base local recruit time. Now so if you're at here, that'll get it down to 2 turns, which again, that's still not ideal. You want to be recruiting stuff that only takes 1 turn, because you want to always be on the move. Also, just ignore this campaign. This was bonkers. Skull Taker, what do you expect? But another thing that you can do is get this here, Global Recruit Duration -1, which will stack with it. So that'll bring it down to 1 turn global recruit time. And when it gets to that point, that's when it's viable to recruit that unit for sure, but it can take a little while to do that, that's all. I've been able to do that with this particular campaign, but again, Skull Taker, it's a bonkers campaign, even though it has been a bit nerfed now. So as for the Exalted Bloodletter, even though it is a stronger unit than regular Bloodletters, their inconvenience, I suppose, in terms of being able to just recruit them on the go, I'm going to put them at B tier. Again, they are stronger than these ones here. I'm not taking that into consideration. It's not all about strong unit equals better. If you're sitting around for several turns recruiting, your existing bloodletting will go down. You have to take that shit into consideration. You want to fight a battle every single turn. When you recruit a lord, you recruit the lord, you recruit whatever takes one turn, and then you get fucking moving. You want to kill something straight away. Don't sit in the settlement and recruit for 20 turns. That's not ideal. Unless, of course, you're recruiting like some really bloody good units, and that's fair enough if you want to do that. But that's not optimal. You want to hit the ground running with these Khorne factions and just immediately start smashing, because you don't need a full stack in order to win with them, because they're so damn strong. And that's why I'm putting it B tier. In my opinion, especially considering many of these other units here are recruited at tier 1, and they're actually higher tier, sorry, not tier 1, recruited in one turn, but they're recruited at higher tier. It's very strange that these units here take 2 turns to recruit again. That's why I'm putting it B tier. Okay, as for the Chaos Warriors, this one here I'm going to put it at A tier as well. Super strong unit. Recruitable straight away as long as there's a mortal settlement available, and basically you've got the tankier infantry and then you've got your heavy hitters. Combining these two together, you've got a really good force. You've got your anvil, you've got your hammer with them. If you don't want to use cavalry, which you can. Okay, then we've got Chaos Warriors with halberds. So this is a tier 2 unit. You have to recruit it from a military building, the same building chain as these guys here. This is a building that you do want to build, and you want to build it as early as possible because it's got access to the cultist hero. The Khorne heroes are very useful. So this is a good time to bring in tier 2. You've got your a pretty damn decent anti-large unit, and this is about when you'll start to see some pretty low tier either like monstrous infantry or cavalry from the enemy. And so this one here, I'm going to put it at A tier as well. Good solid addition to your infantry. It only has a base recruit time of 1 turn, which means you can easily globally recruit it in 1 turn as long as you have some bloodletting. Again, this is why it's so important. You've got to keep hitting things as much as possible. Also, another thing with Khorne is having sack cities in order to keep your bloodletting of inactive lords as much as possible can be really useful, because they only need to participate in a battle. So you can have 4 lords basically just pound down on some faction that you've basically brought to the brink of extinction, just to keep their bloodletting up, and so that you can globally recruit or do whatever you want with them. So that's entirely up to you if you want to do that. It's also a good way to make some money, because Khorne has no supply lines, so you can recruit as many lords as you want, and it's not going to increase the upkeep cost of other lords. And it's a good way to train them up as well and get skulls. A lot of advantages with Khorne and things that you can do. Okay, and then we've got at tier 3 in the Chaos Warrior line, the Chaos Warrior anti-infantry, the dual weapon. So this is at tier 3. Again, another one that only takes 1 turn to recruit. So 2 turns base turns globally. But again, look how much bloodletting you need to get in order to reduce the global recruitment. You just need to win a couple of battles. So it's very easy to globally recruit them in 1 turn. And your finances should not be an issue with this faction. It really shouldn't, unless you're being too passive or you're losing too many battles. Okay, so this one here, also A tier. That way you've got your standard melee infantry, armored, good solid troop, your anti-large, and your anti-infantry. These guys here, they don't have a lot of armor piercing, but at tier 3, you're not really going up against super heavily armored units, and they can still hold their own up against armored units as well. But it's a good amount of anti-infantry for sure. Okay, then we move on to the chosen units. So a bit of a weird stuff going on with them, because again, if we have a look at the structures, they're recruited quite early from a mortal settlement. The regular chosen are recruited at the same tier as Chaos Warriors of Khorne. But you can't build this structure in a minor settlement. So you have to build it in a major settlement in order to access them, whereas the other ones can be built in a minor settlement. So you have to dedicate your major settlement to a mortal one if you want this structure. So you get that at tier 3, and that'll give you access to both Chosen of Khorne and Skull Reapers. So again, with Skull Reapers, you've got another anti-infantry variant available at tier 3. Again, a bit of a redundancy, except this one here also has magical attacks. Again, we'll get to them in a moment. So Chosen of Khorne, this is just like a vastly stronger version of this one here. Serves the exact same function, just shields, good stats, but it does have flaming attacks. Flaming attacks can be good in some cases, but in most cases it's actually detrimental, because most enemies in the game are just not weak to fire, and there are quite a few enemies in the game that are actually strong against fire. And the units that are weak against fire, you don't really need fire to take them down most of the time anyway. So often the time with Khorne units, fire attacks can actually be detrimental. It's not that big of a deal. you just got to be aware of it, that's all. So as for the Chosen of Khorne, because it's available, it's such a super heavy infantry unit that's available so early on, and it only takes 1 turn to recruit, which means also 1 turn to recruit globally if you've got some bloodletting, I'm going to put it at S tier. This is the kind of unit you want to have put into a Lord of Khorne, because they've got some bonuses that will give physical resistance to like Chosen and Chaos Warriors of Khorne. So that's the kind of Lord I would put that one in if you want it to be really an S tier unit. So quite strong. Again, expensive unit. Don't worry about it though, because you should be making loads of money. If you're not making loads of money, you're doing something wrong. Okay, it's not the unit. Doesn't matter about their price. It's fine. Okay, then at tier 4, you've got access to the Chosen unit with dual weapons. So a heavier version of this, basically serving the exact same role, also has flaming attacks. Again, this one here is also going to go into S tier. It is a very good melee infantry unit, and Khorne can get to tier 4 very quickly because of some janky stuff that happens with them, right? If you research this one here, which is what I would recommend going for first, growth per region, plus 10 after winning a battle. So if you have 4 regions in a province, every time you fight a battle, that province will get 40 growth. If you're fighting 10 battles per turn, which that's great if you can, honestly, then that is going to generate you a hell of a lot of growth. And you will be able to get to tier 5 really bloody quickly. Again, Skulltaker's campaign is bonkers, so growth was just not an issue whatsoever. I've got 5 surplus even after going to tier 5 here. But again, this was a really wonky campaign. And I've got loads of sack cities everywhere here. I've taken this to the absolute extreme. You don't have to play this way. But I'm just saying, even if you play it even somewhat along those lines, you will get plenty of growth. So you don't need to build a growth building, you just need to fight battles and you'll grow quite quickly. So again, S tier with that. Now, we go on to the DLC units, the Skull Reapers and the Wrathmongers. Now, I did recently just do a Doomstack video on the Wrathmongers, and you might be thinking, well, I've just put the Chosen of Khorne at S tier, and I did say that Wrathmongers are better than them. Yeah, so let's just be real. I'm gonna put them at S tier because they are better in my opinion than Chosen of Khorne, but not necessarily in all cases. But I do think that all of these units here, these 3, are S tier. Now, as for this one here, I'm gonna put that one actually at A tier. I don't think the Skull Reapers are quite as good compared to these ones here. So let's go into here and I'll explain why. Okay, so it's definitely a good unit. Like A tier is not bad. It's your melee infantry that has, also mortal melee infantry that has magical attacks. But the thing is, why not just get a demon? Demons have magical attacks, right? So it doesn't really serve that purpose there, because it's anti-infantry, but this is also anti-infantry and armor piercing. This one's got more models. This one's slightly cheaper, but again, money's not really that much of a factor with it. My advice with Skull Reapers is don't really worry about it too much and just skip it and just go straight to Wrathmongers, because Wrathmongers, goddamn, do they hit like a truck. They don't have anti-infantry, but they're super quick. Like, they're way quicker than Skull Reapers, so their base speed is 46. I think that's even quicker. Yeah, that's even quicker than Exalted Bloodletters. And there's quite a lot you can do to speed them up even further if you've got access to a Bloodspeaker Lord. That's what you want to put these guys into. And if you've got Scar Bloodwrath attached to the army as well, you can boost these like absolute crazy. But even if you've only got a Bloodspeaker Lord, which again, that one does boost these ones here as well, but Wrathmongers, especially because they've got a lower entity number, combining them with a Bloodspeaker Lord allows you to keep these guys essentially immortal, because they take a lot more punishing before a single entity will die. You can use their cannot die mechanic, so they don't lose any entities for 60 seconds, and then you just heal them afterwards with the Bloodspeaker ability, because they've got a heal ability and also a you can't die ability for like 60 seconds. So they combine especially well with Bloodspeaker Lords. Really, really bloody strong unit, and in my opinion, one of the strongest melee infantry units in the game. Wrathmongers, they are just all around super good stats, and they hit like a truck, and they've got really good survivability. So that's why I'm putting them at like S tier above these ones here. Okay, so moving on to some other mortal units, melee infantry. You've got the Forsaken of Khorne. I don't really think Forsaken are that important. I mean, they just don't really serve a role that these guys here can't serve. They're armored, but you've already got armored units. They're damage dealers, but you've already got damage dealer units. They're not anti-infantry. They're just kind of a weird. You just kind of need to have a Forsaken in the roster because all the Chaos factions need to have a Forsaken. They're not bad units though, so if you want to recruit them, you can. They're recruited from a different structure. If we have a look over here again, so the Forsaken can be recruited. Let's see, from either demon or mortal settlements, and they're recruited at rank 2. So their armor is 100, but you know. Chaos Warriors have more armor and they've got shields. They are quicker, so speed 46, they are at the same speed as Wrathmongers, and that's good. But the Wrathmongers do hit harder, but they also come a lot later. They also do flaming attacks, and you guys know how I feel about flaming attacks. I would like it if it was a toggleable ability, like you'd turn off the flames, because there's just so many instances in the game that you encounter something with like 60% flame resistance and it just can't do any damage. And there's nothing in the game that has 60% flame weakness. So it can be a bit of a trap. It's also got extremely low melee defense, so these guys here get hit pretty damn hard, and they die very heavily. So I don't think they're that good. Not a high priority early on, so I'm going to put them at C tier. But if you want them, you can make them work. You can make anything work with Khorne. It's just a super strong faction. Okay, then we've got the Khornegors. So again, recruited at tier 2, at the same tier as Chaos Warriors with halberds. So what advantages do these guys have? They're, again, a bit of a weird unit. I'm not super fond of them. But let's have a look at what they can do over here. So with Khornegors, again, recruited at the exact same tier, but from a different structure. So this one here also provides 80 income. So in terms of the advantages of the buildings, this one here does give you access to a hero. This one here doesn't. This one does max out to tier 5. So you can put this one in minor settlements, but typically speaking, you'd want to put this one in a major settlement so you've got access to eventually the Slaughterbrute. Otherwise, it just caps out here with some okay units. But anyway, so everything in Khorne's roster that is a mortal unit has Frenzy, so comparing that doesn't make sense. It does have Primal Fury, so that'll add extra melee attack, because its base melee attack is trash. But the thing is, if this unit here gets particularly scared, if it drops its leadership down, it starts losing these abilities here. And that's where the Chaos Warriors are going to have the advantage. So Khornegors are going to be useful against enemies that are weaker than you. They're not going to be able to go up against, and they're not going to perform as well against enemies when you're outnumbered. And like I said in the early stage of the campaign, when you're at a fairly low tier, and you may not have huge finances, it's okay to roll around with a stack of 10 units as opposed to 20. And if you're doing that with Khornegors, it's not going to perform as well as an army full of Chaos Warriors, because they will hold the line way longer, and their stats are overall much better. And their upkeep costs, again, shouldn't take that too much into consideration. These are not that much cheaper. They've also got this one here, Fury of the Skull Throne. So when they drop below 50% base health, they become unbreakable for 22 seconds. Kind of like Buy Our Blood for Kislev. I don't think this is that useful, because typically dropping down to 50% health, that's not really the threshold that a unit would break anyway, and at 22 seconds isn't really that long, and they've only got one use of it. I just don't think this is particularly good unless the unit gets nuked by like a spell or like a massive charge or whatever, something like that. You know, they've got anti-large, but again, you've got a better anti-large unit over here, and I just don't care about the upkeep cost. So I would always recruit a Chaos Warrior of Khorne over a Khornegor. They are quick, but again, you've got quicker units with the Forsaken, and especially with the Wrathmongers. Again, that one's at tier 4. So I just don't see a lot of utility with this one here. And it does also have Woodsman. Again, I don't care that much about doing that with Khorne. Whether I'm fighting in the trees or in the open field, it just doesn't matter that much. So I think that it's an interesting unit, probably for the Beastmen, but for Khorne, I'm going to put it at C tier just because its role is already served by better units at the same tier, and so I just skip it, basically. That's my thoughts. You can recruit them if you want, you can get a lot of value out of them. It's just for your personal flavor. So that's where I would put these ones here. They're not bad units, it's just like personal flavor. I don't want you to look at any of these and go, oh, Legend said this one is weak. And nothing in Khorne's roster is weak. It's just that you get better results out of these ones, that's all. Okay, so now moving on to the Dogs of Khorne. So I believe last time I put these ones at D tier, but I have since warmed up to them a hell of a lot more because Karanak has arrived. So Karanak Legendary Hero will boost both the doggos and also the Hounds of Khorne. Now, I'll just actually do a bit of a comparison with these two here because I think that's important. So, tier 1 unit recruited from this building here. I don't prioritize building this one in either a demon or a mortal settlement, so it's not that big of a deal. But you can if you want, if you've got multiple settlements, and no reason why you can't do it. It does provide you with economy. I just usually build this one here first, or maybe something from over here. If you want to build the demons, that does come at tier 2, so may not be available anyway at tier 1. To get these, that is. Okay, so this one over here, you've got a very fast unit, so 95 speed. That's very quick. Very good at running enemy units down. I don't mind Chaos Warhounds of Khorne at all. Now, comparing them to Hounds of Khorne, these ones here have magical attacks. They've got fewer entities. They are at the same speed. You've got some physical resistance with them. But being a demon that hasn't got fantastic leadership, sometimes they can disintegrate, whereas these ones here are more likely to just rout, and you'll get them in the next battle because they'll mostly leave and you'll still have like 40 or 30 entities left on them. And they've also got some missile resistance, as these have it as well. These ones don't have missile resistance, and that's probably something that's going to be most vulnerable to, not necessarily physical attacks. It just depends what you're going up against. I do find that Chaos Warhounds of Khorne are better at running down infantry than Hounds of Khorne. Hounds of Khorne overall are better hitters. At tier 2, I just don't really care that much about them. I actually prefer to go with Chaos Warhounds of Khorne, even when I've got Karanak in the army. So, I'm actually going to put this one here at B tier, and this one at C tier. When it comes down to the Hounds of Khorne, I just don't think that they're an exceptional unit, and for the role that they perform, I find that they're best used. Just put 1 or 2 of them in your army. Don't make a doom stack of them. I have made a doom stack of Hounds of Khorne. I just didn't think it was very good, even with Karanak in there. I would mainly prioritize putting a couple of these ones in your army to chase down broken units or to provide that final hit to break them. So these ones here, cheaper price point, earlier to recruit. Again, price shouldn't matter that much. But I do find that these ones, I get a bit more value out of them because they run enemy units down a lot better. Because maybe just more entities of them. Maybe it's also their animation. They just seem to do a lot better with it. Okay, then we move on to the cavalry here. So if we have a look at them, the cavalry begin at tier 2. So the Marauders, the Marauder Horsemen of Khorne, are tier 2. But in my opinion, these are really good Marauder cavalry because they have armor piercing. However, they also have flaming attacks, and they also don't have that much ammunition. But they also have anti-infantry when they go into melee. So this is a early game sort of Marauder unit that is quite versatile. I've actually managed to get quite a lot of value out of Marauder Horsemen of Khorne in the earlier stages of the campaign. Even in the later stages of the campaign, these are quite good at taking out armored single entities. So it could be your way of dealing with those kind of units. I think that Marauder Horsemen of Khorne are some of the best sort of like missile cavalry in the game. I'm going to put them at A tier, despite the fact they've got flaming attacks and that they're, a lower tier unit. For tier 2, I think it's quite good. Okay, then the Knights of Khorne. I am not fond of the Knights of Khorne at all. So again, looking at these guys here. So the Chaos Knights of Khorne regular version, they come at tier 3. And the Chaos Knights of Khorne with Lancers, they come at tier 4. I do not think that this is worthy of a tier 4 unit. I think they are both worthy of tier 3. They also both have flaming attacks, which there's too many units in Khorne's roster that has flaming attacks. I'm not a huge fan of just everything having flaming attacks, because if you go up against something like Chaos Dwarves, you're going to be up shit creek. You really don't want to bring these sort of units. But again, that's just one faction. Also, High Elves, you've got to take that in consideration as well. They tend to be around a fair bit, and there could be more of them soon, who knows. And overall, I think that they're sort of a master of nothing, but good at everything a little bit. I'm just not really into heavy cavalry that much in Khorne's roster. I think you just got better options to get better value. If you want to put a couple of them in your army, you definitely can. It says anti-infantry in here, but they're not really anti-infantry. They don't have a whole lot of armor piercing. Decent combat stats, decent amount of speed, but these are just not, in my opinion, super fantastic units for that tier. So I'm going to put the regular knights, because they are tier 3, so I think that they're where they should be. Also, another thing, these units both take 2 turns to recruit normally. Again, I got a problem with that when playing as Khorne. I need to be on the move constantly. I don't want to sit around and lose my bloodletting, because you'll lose one rank of it every single turn that you're not in a battle. After the first one, that is. So as for the regular knights, I'm going to put it at B tier, because it's not a bad cavalry unit, right? I'm just not super fond of them. And as for the lance and the Lancers one, I'm going to put that at C tier, because it actually has lower overall stats than this one, apart from a bigger charge bonus, and I don't consider the charge bonus to be that valuable, especially considering these are considered anti-infantry units, and a lot of the time when you charge into an infantry unit, you will knock it down and actually not do any damage to it, and so the charge bonus can go to waste. It's a bit of a janky thing with the game, so I much prefer it to have more melee defense, so you can pull out of the fight and not take as many casualties. And for a tier 3 unit, it does alright, whereas this one here has it takes more damage, while not necessarily dishing out more than this one. It depends on the situation. Charging it into a cavalry unit, actually, you get more out of the charge bonus, because cavalry units can't get knocked on their ass. When a unit is knocked on their ass, they actually can't take any damage. It's really bloody weird. Just some wonky things that happen with this game. Again, not bad units. It's just that you can get better value out of these guys here. If you want speed, you want cavalry. Honestly, these ones here will perform just fine, because they'll be faster than them. They'll be able to dish out damage without receiving damage, and they're not bad in melee, and they're actually anti-infantry. They're just not going to be. They're not going to be able to take on elite units. That's all. But then again, they can shoot them, so you can do that. Okay, then we've got Skull Crushers. Now, I quite like Skull Crushers. If we have a look at them, Skull Crushers are a tier 5 unit, so it does take quite a while to get to these units. But I think that this is the kind of unit you want to put into Arabal's army, since he specifically boosts these ones more than anyone else. This is a super strong unit with an actual speciality. So it's armor piercing, and it's anti-large cavalry. So that is a really good combination. It's reasonably quick. It's very heavy hitting, so you've got bonus versus larger, so that acts as extra weapon strength and melee attack. So basically against large opponents, their melee attack goes to 54 base, and quite a lot of armor piercing in there. This is what you want to be using to charge into monstrous infantry, into enemy cavalry. So if the enemy are bringing their version of chaos, or just regular knights, let's just say you're going up against the Empire, and they're bringing their Reichsguard, I don't really want to charge my Chaos Knights of Khorne into Reichsguard. I will happily charge my Skull Crushers of Khorne into Reichsguard, and they will chew them up and spit them out for breakfast without any problem whatsoever, and still have plenty more to go. Another thing is, because they've got lower number of entities, they take more damage before they even start losing entities. And as you lose entities, you lose damage output as well. And also, they've got a really high charge bonus, just as much, pretty much, or just a little bit less than the Chaos Knights of Khorne. But again, with the charge bonus, you get more value out of it when you're charging into large units, because you're not knocking the fucker down, which is stupid that it doesn't do any damage when they're knocked down. But yeah, really good unit, Skull Crushers of Khorne. So I'm going to put that one at S tier. This is the go-to cavalry. Now, tier 5 takes a little while to get there, unless you're fighting lots of battles, in which case it doesn't take that long to get there. So don't worry too much about that. Really solid tier 5 unit, in my opinion. Okay, then we've got the Blood Crushers of Khorne. So this is the demon variant. So you need a demon settlement for it. And it's basically the exact opposite. It's just anti-infantry. You got armor piercing, anti-infantry, magical attacks. So this is what you would use, in my opinion, if you want to use cavalry to take out infantry. Sure, when you knock things down, it's still not going to take any damage. That's just an annoying part of the game. But you've got the actual bonus versus infantry, so that counts as melee attack bonus and also extra weapon strength. So against infantry units, their actual damage output will be 78. So comparing them to this one here, it is a lot higher. Plus they've got armor piercing, plus they've got physical resistance, plus they've got the Hellblade. If you're looking for cavalry to use against infantry, Blood Crushers of Khorne are the way to go. Because as I've said before, I don't care about their upkeep costs, and it doesn't really matter that much about them being tier 5. It doesn't take that long to get to tier 5 playing as Khorne. So this one here, in my opinion, is also an S tier unit. Really bloody good for a demon-based army, I guess. Okay, then we've got the chariots. Chariots are a bit weird for Khorne. I think they're kind of unnecessary. Khorne is not really known for having great chariots. So you've got the Chaos Chariots of Khorne. I guess another thing I got to point out, these do take a little while to recruit, much like these ones. So, but because they're so elite, you don't really replace them. So I just want to point that out. When it comes to the tier 5, I kind of make a little bit of an exception for longer recruit times, whether it be 2 or 3 turns. Sure, you can reduce it a bit, but usually these are recruited new army, and these are the first things to recruit. And it's okay if your bloodletting isn't maxed out, or if you've just been sacking a few settlements. So I'll make a little bit of a compensation for that, just because they're so elite. There's nothing you're going to replace this unit with, because that's the top tier. Whereas these units down here, maybe you're going to want to replace them at some point, if they get wiped out or whatever, and so you want to be able to replace them quickly if they're also, lower tier units. Okay, so the chariots. So the Chaos Chariots of Khorne, tier 2 unit, compared to Gorebeast Chariots of Khorne, tier 4 units. Both of them have 4 entities. This one here is slightly higher tier. It's basically just higher stats. The regular Chaos Chariots of Khorne have 78 speed. I think that speed is pretty damn important. These ones here have a lot more hitting power. Honestly, both of these chariots, they're just better versions of each other, just higher stats. Both of them are fine. I don't usually focus too much on chariots that much with Khorne, but the way that they charge through infantry actually works out really bloody well. So it just depends on what you personally prefer. I'm going to put both of them at B tier, because they are pretty much doing exactly what they should be doing at the tier that they are at. But they are very bad against large units. Like if you get caught by cavalry, chariots are terrible against those kind of units. So just be very careful about that. And at the end of the day, Khorne has already got loads of infantry that are anti-infantry. But again, if you want to put some chariots in there as well, they're fine. There's nothing wrong with these units whatsoever. But I don't think that they have any other role outside of just taking out infantry. And again, you've already got those bases covered. It's up to you how you want to go about it. Okay, then we've got some monstrous beasts over here. Now, Spawn of Khorne. Not really a huge fan of Spawn of Khorne in general. So consistent across all the monogods. So this one is recruited over here at tier 3. I don't really feel like this is a tier 3 unit. I feel like it should be tier 2, especially considering the Blood Beasts of Khorne are available at the exact same tier. Sure, the Blood Beast of Khorne is a little bit more expensive, but who cares? You're playing as Khorne. You should be rich by this point anyway. So this one here, 160 damage as opposed to 140, but you've got armor piercing here, which is more important. Well, this one's got armor piercing as well. It's just not majority armor piercing. Now, the big factor when it comes to monstrous infantry, that the thing that I rate very heavily is speed. These are units you want to hit through units, or like pull them in and out of combat, constantly be charging. When it comes to Spawn of Khorne, their animations are quite static. They kind of just stand there and just twirl their arms around a little bit. These are very vulnerable to getting shot. I've always had a problem with them, how quickly they die. The fact that they're unbreakable is actually detrimental, because it can be difficult to pull them out of combat sometimes. And units that rout, the enemy kind of gives up trying to kill them. So these units here are more likely to get wiped out, meaning they need to be replaced all the time. So I much prefer getting Blood Beasts of Khorne, because they're quicker. They're actually not unbreakable, which is kind of a plus. The thing is, they'll fight to the point where there's only like maybe 4 of them left, at which point I want them to leave. You've done your job, I hope. I don't want the unit to get wiped out. That's important. You want your units to have some degree of survivability, but their animations and their speed is what gives them the edge over the Spawn of Khorne. Also, Spawn of Khorne, flaming attacks, and you know me, I'd prefer them just not bring flaming attacks in most cases. So when it comes to these two here, I'm going to put the Spawn of Khorne at C. I'm going to put it at D tier actually, and the Blood Beasts of Khorne, I'm going to put them at A tier. These are pretty damn good monstrous infantry, but they pale in comparison to minotaurs. Minotaurs are fucking awesome, and they're better than ever now with the tech tree, because if you have a look at that, I'm not sure if this was the way it was in the previous tech tree, but if we have a look at Snorting Blood over here, passive ability Gore Greed for Minotaur units replaces Blood Greed. So as they, I think, accumulate kills, or just time in combat, they will start to heal. And they'll still heal even when they're out of, if you pull them out of combat. Now, one of the greatest things about Minotaurs is their animations and also their speed. So their speed's on par, I think, with the with the blood beasts. Actually, we'll just do a quick check on that actually. So again, recruited from the same building, but these are tier 4. So speed 65 compared to, okay, they're actually a little bit slower than the Blood Beasts of Khorne. But what I've always loved about Minotaurs of Khorne is actually their animations. When they charge, they don't just stand in front of the enemy and get a bit of a charge bonus. They charge through the enemy. If they're being shot at, the enemy just can't like use their ballistics to hit you in the spot. They're really good at dodging missiles just because they're so hard to bloody hit because of their animations. The enemy animation, sorry, the unit animation, that's not part of the stats here, but you should take that into consideration because that does matter a great deal. And Minotaur animations are fantastic, and that's why one of the reasons why I don't like Spawn of Khorne, because their animations are shit. They just stand there and go, "Nurr," and they get shot too easily. They don't move around very well. Minotaurs, it's much harder to hit them. They hit harder. You've got speciality with them. You've got the anti-infantry here, or the anti-large there. I think it's a bit silly that Taurox doesn't have access to these Minotaurs of Khorne. Maybe he'll get them eventually, who knows. But yeah, Minotaurs of Khorne are definitely S tier, both of them. They're both recruited from the same tier. The anti-large version is considered a little bit more expensive, but who cares, because you should be rich by that point anyway. Okay, then we got a flying unit here, the Chaos Furies. I have in the past not been super favorable towards Chaos Furies, but honestly, Chaos Furies are okay. They're a good unit to use as kind of disposable. They're quick to replace if you need to. They're good to take out like enemy missile units. I kind of think that the Chaos Warhounds of Khorne are better at it. But having a flying unit early on is quite good. So I'm going to put that one there at B tier, because they do have magical attacks as well. They hit quite hard because they've got Frenzy. Okay, now we're dealing the last of this with single entities. So we've got the Soul Grinder of Khorne here. So at what tier is this recruited? This is recruited at tier 4, so it needs to be a demon building. Oh, hang on. But yeah, prevents construction of mortal champion building. So this one here is a tier 4 unit. I think this is one of the better Soul Grinders because they're really good in melee. Although I will say the best one is the Nurgle one. But their missile attack is pretty damn good. Does a lot of damage. But primarily, you send them into melee. But again, that flaming attack, that has some disadvantages. But most of the stuff at high tier here is going to have flaming attacks, that's just going to happen. Yeah, another thing here, the Skull Crushers, no flaming attacks. That's always a plus in my books. So, the Skull Crushers, the Soul Grinder of Khorne, I'm going to put that one at S tier, because it's a really good unit. You can do a lot with it. It's very strong. Most of the single entities are quite good. So, then after that, hang on, go back to this. We've got the War Shrine of Khorne. Now, bit of a weird unit, this one, because your Cultist unit, Cultist Hero, is able to use a mount for the Chaos War Shrine. And I would recommend, if you're going to build a standing army, put a Cultist of Khorne in that army. It's going to help with your replenishment. They can provide summons. They're quite versatile. They're also good fighters. And since they get access to this mount, you don't really want to spam this unit. And so putting one of these in your army is quite good because there's quite a lot of advantages to it. So it's recruited from the main mortal building. So you're definitely going to have that because that's where you get the Cultist of Khorne anyway. It's got the Giver of Furious Glory. So that provides up to 15% damage resistance and also some extra weapon strength. That's really good for sure. But recruiting one of these units as opposed to the hero, I would always go for the hero version because the hero has got way more versatility. You have also got equipment that you can give it so that it can be way stronger than the regular unit can ever be. And if you go up against an enemy that a Chaos War Shrine is going to be fucked by, like let's say you're going up against the High Elves and they've brought a ton of Sisters of Avalon and you're like, oh my god, my Chaos War Shrine is just going to get shot to shit and die. Well, then you can just tell your cultist to just get off the War Shrine and get back on a horse, which it will not instantly die from it. And so you've got a lot more versatility when you're able to basically turn it off and on as opposed to disbanding it and re-recruiting it. So when it comes to this unit in terms of recruiting it, as long as you've got a Cultist of Khorne in your army, I would say don't even bother recruiting this unit because it is redundant because the hero is vastly better and you get the hero earlier than it. The only problem is you need to increase the capacity of your heroes, but since you can do that in minor settlements, it's really not a big deal to get plenty of Cultists of Khorne, and one per army is all you really need. Okay, so then we'll move on to the Bloodthirster, straight away to S tier. I'm not even going to argue with this point, really. Come on, it's a Bloodthirster. Also, in yeah, Khorne. But in Scarbrand's army, he is now able to boost Bloodthirsters by an absolute ton and give them Blood Greed, or whatever the Gore Feast, that's it, that provides them regen. So these units here in Scarbrand's army can actually heal now, so they're really bloody strong. They've always been super strong, but they've not been able to heal, but now they can heal in Scarbrand's army. So that's kind of his doom stack now. It didn't used to be. Ever since the update, he got his skill tree reworked a bit, and that is a big boost for them. That being said, these units in any other army, they hit like a truck. That being said as well, they can get shot down quite easily with focus fire. But, you know, you just don't send them head first into a hail of Hochland long rifles. You know, just try not to do that. It shouldn't be that difficult. They're pretty quick, and they kill things really bloody quickly. Okay, then we move on to the Kadai Destroyer. Sorry, it's a bit of a joke I've got. Ever since somebody pointed out that they use the exact same animation as the Kadai Destroyer, I keep calling them that. But it's the Slaughterbrute. So Slaughterbrute is also a tier 5 unit. So this unit here can be recruited in either a demon structure or a mortal one. This is not mutually exclusive. Another thing is that I should have pointed this out earlier as well. Let me just go to Hell Pit over here. If you can get access to a resource, exotic animals, you will be able to recruit Minotaurs of Khorne, both variants at tier 3, including the Slaughterbrute. So it's actually both a tier 3 unit and a tier 5 unit. At tier 2 here, you've got access to Spawn of Khorne and Blood Beasts of Khorne, and at tier 1, you've got Khornegors, Forsaken, Chaos Warhounds of Khorne. But I don't think that anyone's got super quick access to this resource. Like if you take Arbal into consideration, well, he's got to get there, and you would get to tier 2 by the time you get to here, surely. And then Skulltaker down here. You are actually fairly close to Oxiodal if you, Oxial, not Oxiodal, if you go down south. However, you're more incentivized to go north, but there's plenty of those resources in Lustria sort of area. But yeah, you can get those units a little bit earlier if you get access to it. Just want to point that out. So this unit here, super bloody strong as well. Really good animations because they just use the Kadai Destroyer animation. The only caveat is that do not get your Lord killed, because it's the only unit in the game that permanently rampages. You can't turn it off rampage. If your Lord gets killed, this is a fucking D tier unit, right? It's just totally useless, as we've seen in a disaster battle that I recently did. But I'm sure most of you are not as stupid as the friggin' AI, and you probably won't throw your Lord away at the beginning of a battle. So most of the time, I'm pretty sure it'll be an S tier unit, okay? Just, again, don't get your Lord killed, because otherwise you won't be able to control these units, and if they're not near an enemy unit, they'll just run around in circles. So other than that, they're super bloody strong, and you can boost them a fair bit in the tech tree. Okay, so then we've got these two here. Bit of weird cases. I love these units, but they're not necessarily for everyone. I use them mostly in Blood Hosts, but I'm not going to rank them based on them being in Blood Hosts. So when it comes to Blood Shrines, I particularly like them, regardless of whether they're on a Blood Reaper's mount or not, because they can sort of get that mount. I like them because they boost nearby units, so you only really need one of them. They also have regen while in melee, and they're also anti-infantry. Not that you've got any shortage of anti-infantry. I think that the Blood Shrines of Khorne are S tier, personally. The only downside to them is that they do take 2 turns to recruit normally, but I think this is like an exception because it's such a good unit. As for the Skull Cannons, I also really like Skull Cannons. I don't think they're quite as versatile as the Blood Shrine, because they don't provide the boost in the area, but obviously it's a missile unit. It's essentially artillery as well. You can regenerate your ammunition, which is very handy. But this is a difficult unit to really master, and most of the time I just get a lot of value out of them from Blood Hosts. I'm going to put it at A tier there. And that's my unit roster for Khorne. Now, what I'm going to do here is actually compare it to the previous one that I did. So if we just here, this one was the one that I did 3 years ago, which this was all their roster was. So you can see that there's been a few things that have changed. These 3 are still in the same position. The Chosen weren't even around. These 2 are now in S tier because they're better now than they were. This one used to be an A tier. That's still in A tier there. This one actually went down to B tier. These 3 here are now in A tier. This one went to S tier. That's the undivided version. They don't have that anymore. Or is that the Gorbeast? You know, that's the Gorbeast Chariots, but that was the undivided Gorbeast Chariots. Now they've got Gorbeast Chariots of Khorne. So that was when Total Warhammer first launched. This one here, same position with that. I think I put that one at B tier. I put them in B tier, left them at D tier, and that one I think is still the same. So there's been a few adjustments here and there compared to the previous tier list. Anyway, let me know in the comments below what you think of what you think of this tier list. Whether you agree with it, whether you don't agree with it. Appreciate all your feedback. Don't forget to click the link on the description to get some Manscaped products, 20% off plus free international shipping. Once again, big thanks to Manscaped for sponsoring this video. Appreciate you guys, and we'll see you next time. Later, guys.